Good afternoon. My name is Theodora, Theo for short. I always go by Theo because ever since I moved to the US 30 some years ago now, everyone always messes it up somehow. I always ended up becoming Theodore. So I didn't want to be a chipmunk. So I figured I'd just be Theo. I know this is the ESG conference. This is not specific to an environmental climate crisis chat, but it's more like how can we use technology for good? So it's more of the as part of the ESG. I hope you'll still like it. I will try to be entertaining. So I'll start a little bit with my story. I was born and raised in Hong Kong. I was the only child, and but my mother had a huge family. She had 5 siblings. So altogether, there were 6 of them. They were refugees that resettled in Hong Kong a long time ago. And they lost everything when they moved. My mother had a chance to pursue university with a scholarship. We're thinking about back in the 60s. That was a big deal. But she couldn't do it because her, along with 3 of my aunts, they had to work to support the family so that the 2 youngest siblings of the family could have a chance to come to the United States and pursue the American dream. American dream is something that we've talked a lot about a lot, an idea that has morphed as well through the years. I just came back from the Milken Conference in LA this week. And we also talked a lot about the American dream. What does it mean? What does it mean for immigrants like myself? What does it mean for my children who are little? Make a long story short, at the end of my high school year, at the urging of my grandparents, who at the time were already living in New York for a long time, that we must move. This was back before the handover in the 90s. We must move. So we dropped everything we knew, left everything that I knew, and I went to school in New York. But that was not the rest of the story. I was in high school in Hong Kong, and I had already enrolled in Bucknell University in Pennsylvania. I was going to be a geologist. I love stones. I love rocks. But then my high school teacher said something to me my senior year. He said, "You are so bad in your physics. You would never, ever be an engineer." Now, backdrop. I was in an all-girls Catholic school for 12 years, fairly strict. The teacher was my dad's student. That did not help. And I was spending everything, all my time on things that are not related to class. It was boring, senior. So I said, you know what? I am going to prove to you that I can do it. I changed my school, went to RPI in upstate New York, did Kempo engineering degree, aced all my physics, 1, 2, 3, aced all my calculus, went back to school. And here you go. I'm here. I can do it. It was not me, something else. That was also not the end of the story because I was chemical engineering. I was in school. It was, if I remember, it was a 1-to-7 ratio. Hardly any girls in my school. And I was constantly reminded for the 4 years in my school that I didn't belong. Oh, you must have been here because you're a woman. You must have been here because you're Chinese. You must have been here because you need to fill the quota. Yay. I don't think that has changed much. Why did I tell that story? Because I want to show that our paths are dictated by choices that we make and choices that we don't make. I didn't choose to go to RPI. I didn't choose to come into chemical engineering. By the way, I spent a year doing that. And afterwards, I'm like, yeah, I'm done. I wanted to do something else. It's all the choices that we go through every single day that dictate where we are and where we will be, not just for the immediate impact of what happened, but also the journey thereafter. Is the opportunity cost of doing something and not doing something. And that's why I brought that up. And of course, I don't know how to work the mouse. That was 20-something years ago. It's back in the 90s. And since then, I've spent more than 15 years in IT, doing telecommunications, breaking down systems, tearing things apart, bringing them back up. I had then had 2 children. I left my job for a break and taught me, children teaches you a lot of stuff. But what brought me to was the realization that apparently it's really hard to be a working mother in the United States. It's even harder if you're a working mother and you're a woman of color. And it's even harder if you're a working mother, woman of color, and took a break, because the first question I always got asked was, can you still work? I'm pretty sure I can still work. Like, can you still work the way you did? Yeah, I'm pretty sure the kids didn't eat my brain, but voila, we're here where we are. For every action, there is a reaction. That's something I talk a lot about in financial services. What we provide to consumers, there's a reaction. What we choose as consumers, the actions we make, whether or not I want to drive today versus taking a car, whether or not I want to spend time doing this, talking to you guys versus doing something else. There's always an impact. Things do not happen in a vacuum. We don't make decisions in a silo. Why does that matter? Because it matters when we think about the future that we're all in, the future of humanity. I gave a talk last year in Sibos for financial services. And in there, they asked me, what is the future of money? We talk a lot about crypto. We talk a lot about, whether or not cash is going to exist or not. We talk a lot about the physical forms and the digital forms of money. And what I said was, the future of money is not in the forms that they exist, but its purpose. That needs to be the future of money. What can we do with whatever form that exists? Access to clean water, access to clean air, access to whatever dreams that we have. That is the future of money. So bring me back down to planet Earth for a second. Money makes the world go around. That's what I learned from my mom at that time when they were so poor, they had to rely on the church to even get food to eat. To where we are now, $1 billion bets thrown into the private sector ecosystem every single day. Last year, AI funding reached record. Last year, fintech funding reached record. There's not a lack of money, because apparently some people are very busy planning space travel. Apparently, I did not even know this, in 2027. If you have an extra $5 million to spare, you can actually go to space to stay for a few days. How's that? But while people are worried, how do you plan your space travel? There are millions of us, millions of people on the earth that are worried about whether or not I can even have enough food, whether or not I'll have a place to stay, making trade-offs between medicine and feeding their kids. An extra 263 million people got pushed into extreme poverty because of inflation, because of economic downturn, because of everything else. Something I like to say a lot, and something I learned through my years working in nonprofit. Economic inequality is a policy choice. It's a policy choice. People don't choose to be poor. And that was just extreme poverty. If we look at just below poverty line, 3.3 billion people on Earth this year are going to be living below poverty. That's half of the population in the world. Think about that for a second. This is not getting better. I remember 2 years ago when we started shutting down because of COVID, and I had my 2 kids at home. We were homeschooling them. As hard as it was, I kept reminding them we're lucky because we have internet access, we have food, you have a place to stay, you don't have to worry. And at that time, I remember, I think the stats was about 1 to 4 children, school children, were food insecure. So I asked my kids to think, in your class of 20-something kids, think about 5 or 6 of your friends every single morning go to school hungry. This is the United States of America, the richest country of the world. And not only that, I think some of these headlines you guys probably already know. The richest 1% of the world's population are responsible for more than twice carbon pollution as 3 billion people who made up the poorest half of human. That picture on the right is from Oxfam. I love pictures. Pictures say 1,000 words. So if you just pick 20 of the richest billionaires, they emit as much as 8,000 times more carbon than 8 billion people. Contrast, action, and reaction. And the wealth inequality is not just in the United States, it's not just in North America, it's everywhere in the world where it's getting more unequal. If you take that 10 richest people on earth and ask them to spend $1 million each a day. So imagine $10 million a day that they can choose to spend whatever they want. It would take 414 years for them to spend it down, just that 10 people alone. So not only would it last their kids, their grandkids, and generation after. Let's talk about the gender gap, my favorite topic. This is the VC funding in the United States for female founders. You notice that little dark color on the bottom? That's the amount of funding that goes to people. The other chart that I show, there's record amount of money going to private sector for AI startups, for fintech startups. It is still a record low amount of funding going to female founder startup. It's 2.1% to be exact. It is the lowest it has been in 5 years. It's not because of lack of awareness. Every day you look in the paper, you see people saying we need to invest more in women. We need to invest in more in founders from communities of color, from communities that are underrepresented. So I ask, what in the world is going on there? 136 years to get to gender parity, 268 years to get to economic parity, 268 years. My daughter is 9 years old. I don't know how to tell her she's not going to see it. Her kid's not going to see it, neither are her grandchildren. We will not get there. And as I said, economic equality is a human right. It is a policy choice. It is a solvable problem, but it is a human right. And kids are still being disconnected. So I'm going to pause right there. And now, are we looking at the right thing? We are so hyper-focused on emerging technologies, sending people to space. We are so hyper-focused on creating metaverse. That is the new buzzword in my ecosystem the last year. The metaverse, what is your metaverse strategy? I don't know. What about real people in the real world? I do have an avatar. My kids love Roblox. We like those things. But what about their education? What about getting food to people that need it? What about getting healthcare? Going back to the choice question, we have a choice. We have a choice in how we spend our time. We have a choice in how we use technology. And I love tech. I grew up with tech. I love gadgets. We can use technology for good. And I'm not talking about whether or not we're going to see robots versus humans. That's all wonderful. I'm talking about doing real things, re-looking at what we can do with technology. How can we use technology to improve health, to improve financial well-being, to improve and hopefully combat climate crisis. So let me take you on a journey. And a lot of the stories after comes from our traveling and talking to different founders around the world, from the stories that people tell us and from stories that are on our podcast. So let's start right here in the United States. We still have 12 million adults that are unbanked, 24 million that are underbanked. So these are all people that either they don't have access to a bank account, they end up with a cash checking service down the street in Dollar General, or they get payday loans because they can't get access to credit. This is the United States, 24 million who are underbanked. And also we can think about immigrants who are not well served because they didn't have a credit history in the United States. It's really hard to open a bank account. But there's hope though. I hope I didn't dread you all too much in the last few minutes. There is hope because there's something we call embedded finance. Embedded finance is a huge focus area in the last 2 years, where we use technology to provide financial services to people wherever they are and whenever they need them. And this is part of the area that gives me hope. We'll start with Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia has a huge population that have been relying on cash as a means of transaction. A lot of them are unbanked. Fun fact, there are 11 countries within Southeast Asia with very, very diverse culture, history, and religion. It's not just one group of Southeast Asian. They all come from different socioeconomic backgrounds. They all have different things that they believe in, and they all have their way of life. But it's a huge group of people. And this is where a lot of the embedded finance opportunity have started. Now there are more and more consumers in that region that are using smartphone. Just like how we do use Uber for Uber Eats, Uber Rides. They use that to get rides, to order food, but more. They use it to get paid, they use it to save, and they use it to invest. And that came from these 4 companies, Ant, Tencent, Grab, and Gojek. So the first 2, Ant and Tencent, these are 2 big tech companies in China. And Grab and Gojek, they're in Southeast Asia that's modeled after Ant and Tencent. And if you want to think about them in terms of the breadth of services they offer, it's a Google plus Facebook plus Amazon plus Twitter and Instagram combined and more. Let me start with the story of Grab. Grab started in Southeast Asia. They were a small ride-hailing company, kind of like Uber in here. And after a while, the founders of Grab, they noticed something interesting. The people that drive for Grab, they didn't have a bank account. They don't have a means to put their money, their earnings. And they also don't have a means to get insurance. And they didn't have a means to invest. And so gradually over time, they added Grab Pay, Grab Invest, and Grab Insure to help their drivers and solo entrepreneurs that are within the ecosystem. And that is what I always use an example. In the US and in Europe, actually, we talk a lot about big tech. We talk a lot about how banks want to get different silos of functions. But I think we're going about it the wrong way, because it's not about land grab. It's not about throwing in a bunch of products for people to get. It's about looking at the people that you serve, looking at what they need, looking at what they don't have, and using technology to get them there, to help not just a day-to-day living and earning, but also helping them invest and build wealth so that they can hope in the future. They can have hope and aspirations, a dream they can go towards too. Similar story in Mexico. We talk a lot about Uber, but in Mexico, Uber actually does more than what they do in the US. They partner with BBVA, which is the bank, to provide services for their drivers. So they get debit card, they get paid instantly, they get access to benefits and services. That becomes the life of the driver. Or we can move a little bit more, Architect. Architect is another big ecosystem that's been cropping up the last 2 years that a lot of micro entrepreneurs in Africa and South America are looking at and focusing on using technology to help them get better, using technology to improve the yield. I'll give you an example. We talk a lot about climate change. One of the impacts of extreme climate is drought. In Africa, if you have a drought, if you're a farmer, your seeds are gone, your crop is gone, and you lose your season. So what a lot of these companies now start doing is they use AI and IoT sensing technology to see there's a drought. And once the rainforest starts again, they dispense a bunch of new seeds to the farmers so they can take advantage of the remainder of the season and replant. And that way, they don't lose their entire livelihood. Alipay also has a similar program in China where they use AI to sense the kind of crops that the farmers are growing and use that to help them get access to microloans. And similar with farmers, fisheries, that they can use AI to actually help them get services and get their products to market in a more efficient manner. All of these things is a different way of using AI. In Hollywood, people talk a lot about AI, talk a lot about Terminator. This is actually way more fun because this is improving people's livelihood. This is actually helping people do what they do and do it better. And I want to talk about another trend in addition to AI, is the trend of aging. It's actually one of my favorite topics. I spent a few years in AARP looking at what does it mean if we have an aging population. Here's the fun fact. Since early 1900s, we have gained an extra 30 years of living. 30 years. That doesn't mean that we're going to all work an extra 30 years. I hope not. My daughter already asked me the other day how we're planning to celebrate my half a century old birthday next year. So I'm 49. But what does longevity mean? Longevity doesn't mean that all of a sudden we just have a bunch of older people that we need to worry about and think about the burden, because that's what oftentimes people want you to think about. If you go to Google search engine, you look for aging, all you see is physical ailments of aging. But what about other things? What about opportunities? What about we have an extra 30 years to do what we want to do? What about we have an extra 30 years to rethink how we approach life and work and education? We don't always need to do school, work, retire, because now there are more and more people who start their own business. I started mine when I was in my 40s. The fastest growing demographic of people that are starting new businesses are those that are after 45. Makes sense. You have more experience, you have a wider network, you have a chance to pursue something different. We don't have to be tied to a W-2. But there's something else, caregiving. This is a new study that just came out. 60% of first-time caregivers are Gen Z and millennial. Back quite a few years ago, when we first did the study, it was mostly women in their 40s with children. But now the age of the caregivers are getting younger. I get excited about this because if we look at the news, how often do we see headlines that pit one generation versus the other? How about we rethink it and look at it more from an intergenerational perspective? There are lots of people that said they moved back home the last year to spend time with their parents and their grandparents. This is a wonderful opportunity for us to learn from each other. I wish I could live with my parents. They're overseas. I had not been able to visit them because of COVID restrictions. It's been almost 3 years and it kills me. If we have a chance to do it differently, why not? And that brings the opportunities, because every time when I talk to people that are caregivers of their parents, the first question I got asked is, how can we do it more efficiently? How can we make it easier with technology? Because a lot of caregivers, they're younger, they're working, they're older, they're still working, and people end up taking time off to go take care of their parents and grandparents. What are their tools to help coordinate all these better? I've seen it firsthand with my grandmother. She was living in Pennsylvania a couple of years ago until she passed away with my uncle. She was well in her 90s. As I mentioned, we have a huge family of us up and down the East Coast. Just coordinating all of the expenses that we need to help take care of my grandmother coordinating all of the tasks, the business, and all of that. It was a nightmare. I love Excel spreadsheet. It was a nightmare. What if we have better tools to do that? What if instead of all of the beautiful fintech apps that help you buy more stuff easier, what if we spend a little bit of that brain power and help the people who are helping their parents and grandparents? Or what about gig economy workers? This is one of the fastest surging group of demographics, but they're not well served by the banks because if you're not a W-2, you have uneven income, good luck trying to get a loan from the bank to get a mortgage. Or a lot of things that we take for granted. I opened my small business account when I started my company. It was a nightmare, complete nightmare. And even to this day, I still raise my hand when people ask who write checks, because I do. That's the only way I can move money from my business account to my personal account, even though they were in the same bank. There are lots of things we can do with technology, help gig economy workers flourish, not just get a ride here and there, but help them imagine a path forward beyond driving delivery. Help them create a community, an ecosystem, help them get insurance, help them get tools. We talk a lot about reskilling, but reskilling not just for people in corporate. In America, 99% of businesses are small business. So I would ask, what are we doing for them? They are the backbone for the economy, but yet if you look at from a tech solution perspective, from a banking perspective, we are not doing anything for them. People talk a lot about hybrid work, how the future of work is remote. For a lot of the gig workers, that is not the future that they have. So what can we do? We talk about ESG, what can we do on the S part of it? How can we create a pathway for more people to choose a different path to succeed? And I used the title New Hope, A, because I'm a Star Wars fan, B, because it was just Star Wars Day for, I don't know if any of you noticed. These are all a crop of fintechs that just started the last 2 years. That's what gives me hope, because people are actually paying attention. New fintech companies come in and say, wait a minute, I was an immigrant. I knew how hard it was to get a bank account, to get credit. Here you go, I have a solution for you. Or Daylight, one of my favorite, LGBTQ. There are lots of challenges that they have just to get access to basic financial services. And they're there to help service them because these are the people who experience it. And they are the best to come up with solutions that can help and bridge the gap. And there are fintech startups that help gig economy workers. There are startups that help specifically Black and Latino customers. And I think there was another one, I don't have it in here, on Asian American communities. Because it's not just banking services, it's a host of other things. When you come to the country, what can you do? Money, of course, is the first and foremost, but what else? What else is what I ask? What else? Or it can be Mac Gardner. He is a fellow alumni of University of Maryland, and I promise him I will put a slide just for him. A wonderful, wonderful, wonderful person. He has spent 20 years in financial services and wealth management specifically, helping people figure out their money. And finally, he said, you know what? We need to start younger. We need to start way younger. We need to help kids understand what is money, how to save, how to plan those basic concepts that is fleeing. I saw it with my kids when I took them to Hong Kong before COVID, the last trip we had. We got them NFC watches. So everywhere they went, they would just tap, pay, and go. No money exchange hands. That's what we always want, right? Ease of use, frictionless payment. But you know what happened with that? My kids got so used to buying things and beeping and running away, they lost the concept of paying. They lost the concept of the pain of paying, that you actually have to open your wallet and take the money out. They didn't even know how much they spent. When they came back to the States, they were like, thank God we don't have it. I don't know how much you'll end up spending. Or I think about my first experience in RPI. Loved the school. But the first day I went to school, I still remember this, a long table that waited for us in the union. First day, freshman, you want to get something that tie you to the school because you feel proud, right? Guess what it was? A credit card. It was a credit card that promises all kinds of things. It has the school logo and it has, if I remember, I think a water bottle, one of those red ones. Well, sorry. It's a credit card. How harmless could it be? That was my first lesson in money management or not. Because apparently it was really easy to rack up all those charges. And look at what we have right now. Buy now, pay later, same thing. Walk into the mall. You have all kinds of things. It says split in 4 payments. Split in 3 is easy. You don't have to worry. There's no fees. Well, there's no fees until you're late. An average consumer in the United States have 5.8 accounts with financial institutions, average. Most people have way more. I know I lost count after 12 or 15. You think about your credit card, your loan, your mortgage, your car insurance, your savings account, checking account, all of those combined. But there is no good tool to help us manage all of that, plus all of the buy now, pay later relationships. So banks keep doling out different products and services. You have a need, here's another one, here's another one. But what about tools to help consumers manage all of that? What about tools that can help people in the sandwich generation manage not just a big ecosystem of financial services, but also that for their kids and their grandparents and their parents? Remember, I talked a lot about financial caregiving. My wish is one of the brilliant people that are sitting here and somewhere else that I'm not talking to will think of ways that can help me. In 10 years' time, I will be in my 60s. My kids will be in college, hopefully. My parents will be in their 80s. Do you know what's going to happen? All of them is going to need something. My kids need help in college. My parents probably going to need help getting older. I'm in my 60s. Supposedly, I'm supposed to plan for my retirement. Good luck with that. But with all of these forces together, who can I turn to say, I need help? No, I don't need more products. I don't need more loans. I don't need consolidated debt. I need help so that I know what I'm going to do in the next 10, 20, 30 years. Just like what Mac is doing, start young and let's grow. Let's grow together. The journey does not stop. So I'll leave you with a question. What role are you going to play? Because there's talent everywhere. This is a cliche, unfortunately it's not. In my last 15 years working with startup founders, there are so many bright people everywhere. I remember the story of someone who called me. He was in a car driving from Texas to Palo Alto because he said he has sat and waited for 2 years and he couldn't get the support he needs in his hometown in Texas. He had to move his family to California so he can get better access to talent and capital and resources to grow his company. That should not be like this. I go back to what I said earlier. Everything that we do has to be tied to a purpose. Purpose is not an afterthought. It has to be central to everything that we do. I don't care if in the future we have paper money, we have digital currency, we have central bank digital currency. It does not matter. It's purpose. Purpose is what drives us. Purpose is what keeps us around. And purpose is what makes the world go around. So let's think after we leave here at Milken. The topic for this week was the power of connection. But it's not just the power of connecting with people, it's the power of connecting with people and what you do with those connections after. How can you map out your road? And that for your kids, friends, communities in the next 100 years, where do you want to go? Because there is a lot of possibility for us to do good. And I do talk a lot, I apologize. But in here, if you guys picked up a copy, is Beyond Good, is collection of all the stories of entrepreneurs that we have met along the journey. We had cut out 10,000 words from the book so we can fit in stories from people like David Reiling. He is the CEO and chairman of Sunrise Banks in Minnesota, serving communities and immigrants, people that are in the lower third, as people call in the country, people that are poor, people that banks do not want to serve. I have stories about Aspiration, a fintech startup that's started by Andrew Cherney, who previously was speechwriter for Al Gore, that looks at how we can use capital to be more responsible. So that's me right there. And I will stop and thank you so much for spending your time with me. Appreciate it.